Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and not live if you're listening on the radio on Monday, the 22nd of August. This program was recorded on the 18th of August. If you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube on the 18th of August, you can call us, ask your questions. The number's right there on the bottom of your screen. We'd love to hear from you until 5 p.m. Pacific time today. And answering your questions, we've got Brian Brodersen, the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. He's here in the studio with me. And over on the right coast, the east coast, it's... somewhere over there. It's Bobby Conway. He's the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's also the 1-minute apologist guy that you see on YouTube. So give us a call if you've got a question for us on this Thursday afternoon, and if you're listening on the radio on Monday, write down your question so you don't forget it, and then call us bright and early tomorrow with your question. Well, not early, like early in the morning, but early when the program begins at 3 p.m. Pacific time. All right, guys, what's up?
What's up? Well, last week...
Yes, last Thursday.
We ended the program by talking about... The question had to do with the age of the earth, and Bobby answered great. God's purpose in giving us the creation account was not so much to tell us how old the universe is, but to let us know that he created everything, which is right. And so, but you have different, views. Some people... stick to what they would see as the scientific view that says that the universe is billions of years old and the earth is also billions of years old. Others would say that God created things in a mature state. So in other words, the question had to do with the time it takes for light to travel, say, from stars so that we could see them, doesn't that support the idea that the universe must be billions of years old because it would take light that long to travel? And I think the response to that from a young earth person would be that God created everything mature. So when God said, "Let there be light," did it take the light millions of years to get from where it started to where it ended up? Did God, when he created the sun, did it automatically, immediately shine on the earth? When he put the stars in the sky, could you see them automatically? Or was there some long period of time before you could actually see the stars because the light was traveling here? So I tend to think that God created everything in a mature state, just like he created Adam not as an infant, but he created Adam as an adult. So I think, the world around Adam, I think, was all created in when God created the animals and so forth. He created great sea creatures. I don't think he created little, baby ones that were going to grow into great sea creatures. I think he created everything in a mature state. So I think that's another way to consider the age of the earth. But at the end of the day, the Bible does not give us the age of the earth because, like Bobby said, that's not really the point of the Genesis account.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah, and it can be so confusing anyway, like getting our head around some of these dates and stuff. I mean, maybe the old earth argument would say something like, that feels a little bit discouraging maybe for the work of science because the work that you end up doing produces results that really aren't actually true because of the way that God created with an appearance of age. So it would say so some would say that feels like, why would God give us minds to do all this research and learn all this stuff? But then if our research proves to be false, so to speak. So that can create confusion for some. I think when I was a young earther, what I liked about it, the attractive appeal to it was it just felt so simple. Now, I honestly guess I just would be agnostic about the whole question. I have no problem looking at it and seeing that the earth is old because I can be sympathetic to that argument. Like here, God gives somebody the great mind to be a scientist, and they're able to do all these great discoveries. But then when it comes to, some of the things that they're finding, the instruments prove to be false. But at the same token, I guess, I don't know if God created the universe, in a mature state, then, why and how all that produces this extra amount of billions of years, and that gets confusing. I mean, there's like different types of dating for stuff as well. I mean, you have tree rungs that you can look at trees, and that helps people when it comes to geological. Like I was just talking about the universe, but when it comes to just understanding the earth, they look at things like tree rungs. They'll look at rock formations, and rocks can tell you things about age. There's radio metric dating that they use that can basically look at different isotope types, such as carbon or potassium or other elements, and they can provide accurate age estimates based on this stuff. And so across the board, I think what can get confusing is if you take some of these various independent pieces of study in the earth that are showing a uniformity to dating, like trees or rocks and some of these different things, that can be confusing maybe for the old earth. But again, I think there's a part of me that would want to say I'm sympathetic to the people who sit in labs all day and they study as believers, even going, man, this is what it's producing. But then you've just kind of wiped it all out and said this. Yeah. And I'd say, I think both of us would say, we're not saying that you can't do this. We just say both these views fit within orthodoxy.
And I mean, we're not having any kind of a debate over this right now, but we're just talking about it, I think, too. But I would say to the one about, well, gosh, we kind of figured it out, and now you're telling us that it doesn't really work this way. Well, that's sort of what happened with Copernicus and Aristotle. Aristotle taught everybody that it was one way, and everybody sort of believed that for centuries. And then somebody else comes along and says, well, actually, no, it's not that way. Galileo, Copernicus, these guys, said, no, it really is. It's a heliocentric, solar system, not not an Earth-centric. Or I think of Newton and Einstein. So Newton's theories, and they were very much, everybody absolutely believed, and still, Newtonian physics is still legitimate, but he didn't see things that Einstein would later come and see. So I think, that argument, I think it defeats itself just on a human level without even any divine intervention. But here's the one thing that I really think is challenging. I think, so we talked about, you gave, the date for the universe, 13 billion years, the date for the earth, 4 billion years perhaps. And then, okay, so what is the date for mankind, humanity? What would be kind of the common age of man today? What millions of years, right? I mean, I don't think it's in the billions, right? I think it's more in the millions of years. So, but here's my question. We know that we do not have any more than 10,000 years of recorded history. Nobody debates that. All historians recognize, there's history. It goes back to, 6 to 8 to 10,000 years. And then what do we call it? Prehistory, because we don't really know what happened back then. So if human beings have been on the earth for millions of years, why did it take so long to actually start recording what we're doing? And we've only been recording for this relatively very brief amount of time in comparison to how long we've been on the earth. So that one to me is always one I think we should think about that.
Bobby?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much stuff, right? I mean, depending upon which theory, even with Christians, on how and in the particular argument that you take. So if you adopt a theistic evolution, you're gonna be able to fall in line with maybe what those who ascribe to naturalism would say, with the evolution of humanity. If you hold to a young Earth, you are going to date humanity earlier. So the dates just aren't always consistent across the board, and so it does get confusing. I think the thing that, for me, as it relates to atheism, atheism is a worldview that they have adopted a methodology known as methodological naturalism. And methodological naturalism is a method of doing science that basically does not make room for a divine foot to enter the door. And so you can't even consider other alternatives. And so it's basically, closed off. It's more closed-minded. And I really struggle with that, because when you really think about what's going on, I'm blown away today by what God has been revealing. Like, people will say, oh, God hasn't given enough evidence. Bertrand Russell was a famed mathematician and a philosopher. He wrote Why I'm Not a Christian. He lived in the 19th century, and he was asked, what would you say to God, of why you didn't believe? And he said, well, not enough evidence, not enough evidence. But what's amazing to me is a couple thoughts. Number one, isn't it interesting with all of the rise of the new atheism, and they're kind of dying out a little bit, you don't hear about them as much, but they were really noisy. But the statistics that we're getting are still showing in America that atheists are about 3 to 4%. So all that, I think about how much time we as apologists spend defending such a small sector that presents itself as if they're the biggest movement on earth. Well, everything they're doing, it still doesn't grow a whole lot. And then when I think about all the arguments that they try to put out there, and then I think about like DNA, which is amazing, which is it's information rich. Like it requires a programmer to create this, and the different machines like the bacteria flagellum and the little motor that operate. I mean, I'm just blown away by what we're learning through the microscope today, that the longer I'm a Christian, the more absurd atheism even looks to me.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think sort of the analogy of the emperor not wearing clothes. I think more and more people are beginning to see that. I mean, even recently, the crazy thing is, you've probably seen this, Bobby, even recently, Richard Dawkins has made some comments in the last 6 to 9 months where he is like moving toward some sort of a conceding that there could be, and it's just like, oh, this guy was, like C.S. Lewis said about, certain atheists in his day, he was the most hard-boiled egg there was. And now you even hear Dawkins, did you see that, it was kind of a debate, but it was more of a conversation between Francis Collins and Richard Dawkins. And, Collins has Dawkins just sort of conceding on some points, that would really be sort of agreeing that with a theism. So it was really, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and you think of like Antony Flew, who was one of the most famed atheists of the last century. And he ends up becoming a theist, and it created a big uproar with all of his atheist, scholars, and they were writing against him. But it was, he didn't come all the way over to Christianity unless there was some kind of, deathbed conversion that we're unaware of. But it was the fine tuning of the universe. And the fine tuning is so exquisite. It's so incredible. Like things like that if the sun was a little bit closer, you wouldn't have any water. If it was a little bit further, we would freeze to death. All of the necessary conditions put in place where the weak force and the strong force, everything has been properly positioned, that we're even the privileged planet. We actually, the fact that we can observe the universe from the stance of where we are, it is so phenomenal that then you have atheists that come up with a theory known as the multiverse that to explain away the fact that this could be that God. In other words, there's so many universes out there that we just live in a multiverse, and it just happens to have the necessary conditions for life to exist. But then that just pushes this argument one step back. Who created the multiverse?
Yeah. Yep.
Not to be confused with who created the metaverse.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Facebook.
the theory about the multiverse, started to be, thrown out here and there. But now, man, like Doctor Strange, he's latched onto it in a big promotional machine through Marvel. That they're just talking about the multiverse as though it is a fact.
It's just,
and of course, it's the program is a fantasy program, so we will give them that.
Exactly.
Yep, and you can find that video that we were talking about, the Richard Dawkins and Francis Collins video. That's on YouTube. It was done by our friend Justin Briley from Premiere Unbelievable, so check that out. And Rob, does this answer your question?
It does. Nice listening to you guys debate back and forth. That was pretty sweet. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
And Rob, thanks for staying on the phone all weekend. I mean, that was pretty amazing that you hung in there.
Man.
Yeah, bro, get some sleep, man.
Yes. All right, let's go to Gonzalo in California. How can we help you, Gonzalo?
Thank you. The question is, I've seen videos on YouTube where statues appear to be bleeding or moving. What can I tell my Catholic relatives about this phenomenon?
Brian, do you know about these videos with the eyes bleeding and stuff?
Well, the first thing I would say is anything that you see on the screen, nowadays unless you see it right in front of you without a camera in between you, I think you can always have room for skepticism, because it is, you can do anything with a camera these days, and with splicing and with, adding whatever kinds of things you want to put into it. So I wouldn't take any of that seriously. Of course, before the age of YouTube, there were claims that if you visited certain parts of the world, you might find a statue of the Virgin Mary, she was weeping, or, something like that. The stigmata in the hands of a statue of St. Francis were maybe bleeding or something like that. Then this is all just basically superstition. It's mythology that just gets passed, from one person to another. And I don't, you shouldn't put any stock in it whatsoever.
What do you think, Gonzalo?
Right, but what can I tell them? Can I tell them that it's a satanic in nature?
Well, I would just tell them it's fake. It's not real. It's somebody's fooling them with the camera.
That is it. In the same way that our new social media guy, Zach, can fool with the camera and put, pink hair on us right now if he wanted to. Please don't, but he could. It doesn't mean we actually have pink hair. It just means it's one of those illusions. Thank you for your phone call, Gonzalo. Now we're going to go to, Eric hung up, but Jay is on the phone. But that's fine, because Eric's question was similar to Jay's. So go ahead, Jay. What is your question?
Oh, hi, guys. Basically, this is something I've been thinking about for many years, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, our lives are likened to a path. And so I was thinking about free will and predestination. And the thought I had was, if I could see the way God sees when I'm 18 and I could look into the future, I wouldn't see a single path from birth until death. But I would rather see very many paths, all depending upon what decisions I would make. And so, for instance, I get married to a certain person. Well, all the paths where I would have married someone else they're not there anymore. And so I have total free will. And then if I look backwards on my life when I'm almost ready to die, all I see is a single path, because all the decisions I made are now fixed in time. And God, before he created the world, he knew what that path would be. So it's predestined I would be in that. That would be the single path of my life. But starting at the beginning of my life, I really did have free will, and I really had choices that I could make. So it's kind of like two sides of the same coin, with the coin being time. And so I was kind of interested in what you guys thought.
Bobby, you're always thinking about time. You're always putting clock tattoos on your arms. So how would you answer this?
Jay, time's a very complex subject. And I have a healthy respect, and I stand in awe of just what this means for us. We often don't even consider how our viewpoints as it relates to the sovereignty of God and the free will of man, how some of this stuff can even relate to certain theories of time. Then, I mean, there's like, does God, God's atemporal, that is to say that he doesn't exist in time. But then when he creates time, is he still atemporal? Does he exist outside of time? Or does he exist outside of time, but then when he creates time, he exists within time? And so then there becomes things such as tensed truths, propositional tense truths, the way that God relates to the statement of a future statement or a present statement or a past statement. So all that to say, before answering your question, it's very complex. And so if it even sounds complex as I'm sharing it, that was the intent of sharing it, that this is not an easy journey. I do think that the way you're illustrating it, I mean, there could be Molinist viewpoint that God not only knows what you could do in situation A, B, C, or D, but he knows what you would do. So take, for example, David, where David says, hey, if I go down to Keilah, will the people hand me over? And God says, yes, they will hand you over. So he doesn't go down to Keilah. So God knows what he would do had he gone down to Keilah, but he doesn't go down there. And so God knows what he would do when he didn't. So God has this unbelievable counterfactual knowledge that is able to know what we would do in any given set of circumstances. So in a very elementary way, I could, before my kids, go downstairs when they were, let's say, 3, and I could take out 5 food items and I could place them before them. But because I'm intimately aware of what they like, I could know which of the 5 food items they would choose, and they would have the free ability to choose any one of the 5, but they would have chose the one I would have known because I know intimately my child. So God could similarly know, given the circumstances that we're placed in, how we would choose. And so me knowing when I put the 5 types of foods before my daughter, let's say, me knowing which one she would choose because I know her, doesn't mean that she didn't have a choice not to choose. It just means that I knew what she would choose. And I think similarly what you're saying could fit into that.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to have to go back and listen to the archives on that. That was, I love the way you explained that. So now it's just a matter of taking notes and good stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. It's why he is the great doctor.
That's right.
There's a reason he has that.
But you know what though? But I'm telling you, this stuff on time, I don't feel like I've got it figured out at all. I really don't. Like, It's incredible.
There are so many things that, and your brain capacity is much greater than mine, but I find myself I hit a wall when I start thinking about time, when I start thinking about really like what eternity means, when I start thinking about the vastness of who God really is in relation to the universe and those kinds of things. Or when you look at, like we talked earlier, when you're looking into the microscope and whether it's the DNA or you're looking at the intestines of an insect that you can barely even see the insect itself, but you're figuring out what's on the inside of it. My son-in-law is a biologist, and he comes up with the craziest things about what's in the stomach of microscopic, living forms. Mm-hmm. But when you really start thinking that God made all of these things, then my brain just starts to spin out. It's like, okay, I can't really conceive of who this God is in his grandeur and his glory. No word could ever do justice in explaining who God is, I don't think.
Yeah, and that's where, when it comes to stuff like knowledge, I'm so thankful that as believers, look, if apologetics was what was needed, or if everybody had to go on a thorough, exhaustive study before they could come to some conclusions, we would never come to these conclusions. And so the Holy Spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And this is what has been referred to as a properly basic belief. Like, I can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm not a brain in a vat that is being stimulated by a mad scientist that created me 5 minutes ago, but pre-programmed me with memories that would make me think that I've existed for 30 years. I believe in a world of other minds. I believe that I have a real past. Those are properly basic beliefs. And I believe that Christianity is true. And I'm thankful, because if we had to do all of this kind of study before we could feel good about our faith, well, what about all those who throughout most of the world that were illiterate, that never had education, that weren't able to know this? And so it's like Alvin Plantinga says, imagine a person before the court of law, and he's being accused of a crime that he knows he didn't commit, but all the evidence looks stacked against him. Well, would he still be justified to believe in his innocence, even though he looks guilty? And I just want to say to Christians that feel like, man, all the skeptics are putting these arguments out that look like maybe we got it wrong. Well, we have a properly basic belief that the Holy Spirit bears witness with our spirit that we're children of God. And that makes perfect sense to me, that the kind of God that would love us in this way, that would give us an assurance of faith. And that is so good for us to know, because sometimes I think we have to have all these answers before we're okay. And that's just not the case when it comes to things like free will, sovereignty. We don't have to figure it all out. It's the gospel, like a child.
Yeah. And one last thing on this, I think too, that's so fascinating, because, I've heard this numerous times when here's somebody who maybe is a brilliant scientist or, recognized as a brilliant philosopher or whatever. And, I think the assumption, and they're a believer, I think the assumption is, well, man, I wonder what kind of an argument it was that actually brought them to faith. I mean, what would it take for somebody like this to come to believe? Because they're just so incredibly brilliant. They're just so much smarter than anybody else. And you find over and over again that it wasn't an intellectual argument that brought them to faith. It was sometimes a very simple thing, just showing that deep inside, we're not even a brain on a stick. We're way more than that.
Oh, yeah. I have one more thought after the break, if I could share, Brian.
Of course you can. We will be back after we take this break here on Pastor's Perspective, because the time, the clock is telling us we have to take this break. And we'll be back in a few minutes to continue. We recorded this episode on Thursday. If you're on hold right now, we'll get to you as soon as we can here on Pastor's Perspective. Welcome back to Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here, and if you're listening on the radio on Monday the 22nd, we are not live, so don't call in with your questions. If you are on hold right now, we'll get to you as soon as we can. If you're watching us as we record this episode on Facebook or YouTube on Thursday afternoon/evening, you can call us. The number is right there on the bottom of your screen. And answering your questions today, we've got Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway. Brian's the pastor of Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa in Southern California. Bobby Conway from Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, joins us via the Bobby Cam. Bobby is the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. And you had another thought, Bobby, on this topic we were discussing before the break. Go ahead.
Well, last night I was having some reflection time on my own as it relates to the idea of knowledge. And I just try to comfort myself, even in my own journey, because I'm overwhelmed with how much that after all these years of learning, I don't know. And I've realized that not only will I never fully comprehend God, that's not an excuse to not get to know him. We should want to know him. We should love him and think about him. But I'm at the place where I'm going, I could never fully comprehend anything on earth, like an object. So here I'm holding a water bottle. So last night I was just looking around and thinking about all the things I could never comprehend. I could spend the rest of my life trying to understand this water bottle in my hand, and I could never exhaust it. Like, for example, I could never know which pool of water that this was extracted from, how many other gallons of water that this water shared with the other water. I can't know how I just can't even come to terms with this. Like, now this water is in my body. How long will it take for my body to flush it out? Where did the plastic originate that made this bottle? Where did the sticker originate? Where did the factory that this happened? Who came up with the words alkaline water, electrolytes? I could study this bottle all of my life, and there would be things that I would never truly know. How many hands have touched this bottle? How many trucks has this bottle been in? Has this bottle ever been in an airplane? That kind of stuff. And so that's when I step back and I go, man, enjoy God, keep learning, but man, you're going to be humbled by this process, bro.
And enjoy the water, because it's not like you're saying, I'm not going to drink this water until I know the answer to all of these questions. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to die of thirst.
Yes, exactly. That's a good illustration, Brian.
Well, thank you. Brian, any thoughts?
Taste and see.
Yep.
Yeah, I've just concluded Bobby is a tortured genius. This is
his brain is a popcorn machine. That's what he's always said. And
yeah. I don't remember ever sitting around at night and looking around my house and just trying to figure out what everything.
But you might tonight.
Was made of.
You might tonight.
It could be. It could happen. So.
Great conversation.
Kind of stuff a lot, yeah.
Jay, thanks for your phone call. We're going to go to Carrie in California. What did you want to know, Carrie?
Hello. I just am calling for, I guess you could say, advice for starting a new ministry.
Okay. We're ready.
What kind of ministry are you looking to start?
Well, I already have started it. And I guess right now, just in the waiting season of seeing what is happening, just advice as to how to navigate those, I guess, not doubts, but just confusion a little bit, and just the logistics, and I guess just everything starting it. I'm in the full-time ministry that God told me to start. So it's just a huge leap of faith, and it's a little scary.
Is it
advice of one wise counsel?
Is it not going the way you maybe thought it was going to go, or?
No, I don't think so. I think I just have to wait and be more patient. Mm-hmm. But I just have a lot of people who are kind of doubting what I'm doing, and that's around me a lot. So it's just the resources that I need to find also to continue doing this. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Can you tell us anything about what you're doing, or?
Yes. I have started I guess you could say, a research ministry. And what we're doing is asking people for the first study that we're doing if we believe that San Bernardino County, we're asking the residents if they believe they are loved. And then from those results, we are going to connect. I want to connect them to churches and to see how they can provide resources for them. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell.
And some people think that that's like, well, why are you doing that? I mean, that doesn't sound like something God would lead you to do, or is that what's happening?
Yeah, I guess it's just people are kind of confused as to why I would start something like this and go full-time into it without knowing, what's next. It's just walking by faith, and people don't understand that, which I get. I guess it's just more how to navigate getting resources and just to connect with people and kind of dish those, or kind of filter out those naysayers with what I'm supposed to do. And I guess I know how to do that, but I guess I just want wise counselors. So like how you guys started your ministry, kind of what you guys went through and how you guys navigated that too. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think your experience is uncommon for people who take steps of faith, and not everybody's going to see it. Not everybody's going to agree that that's the thing you ought to be doing. The important thing is that you're convinced that this is what you need to do, and if you're convinced that God's called you to do it, then you persevere through the naysayers and the slow development, and you just got to keep pressing on into it. Bobby, you started a ministry called 1 Minute Apologist. I mean, did you ever have any doubts in the beginning, or did you ever have anybody that said, what are you going to do that for? I mean, is that really necessary?
And what was your goal? Did you think you would have 1,200 or 1,300 videos by now, or did you have a lot smaller of a goal? Or
No, I mean, there's two different kind of, there's the church vision that was much more thought out. 1 Minute Apologist kind of happened to me. 1 Minute Apologist was me just saying, it'd be kind of cool to put some videos up on YouTube back at the beginning of YouTube. And so I didn't know how to do YouTube. I didn't have a vision. I didn't have a plan. It was just answer as many questions as possible. And then all these things came together. That's why a lot of these younger YouTubers that are out doing their channels now, they're just so much better at it because they're able to look at how to get in the algorithm and figure all that out. I was kind of the OG of apologetics and YouTube, and so that was different. In this case, with is it Kari?
Carrie or Kari? Yeah, Carrie.
Okay, Carrie. With Carrie, it sounds like she's got a little vision in place where she could be proactive, and there's. It's very normal. I mean, one suggestion is read the book of Nehemiah. It's a great leadership book. And God gives Nehemiah in chapter 1, he gets a burden for his people because they're still in Jerusalem and the walls are in ruins. And not only does he have a burden, he begins to seek God on it. He starts praying. He inquires God. So what happens? God gives him a vision. He prays about it. And then he tries to go and get resources for the vision, goes to the king. And then he starts to meet obstacles along the way, right? He gets the skeptics and the critics, the Sanballat and the Tobiah, that basically minimizes him and criticizes his work. But what does Nehemiah do? He's able to proceed. He's very prayerful, but he's got a good plan in place. He doesn't try to pull it off on his own. He has resources, and God pulls it off when all's said and done, and people glorify God. A good book to read would be Visioneering by Andy Stanley. It's all about how God gives you a vision and he grows you into it. Any vision that God gives you is going to get criticized by skeptics, especially if it's a God vision, because Satan doesn't want visions of God coming to fruition. So just be ready for that. I would say go ahead and live in the book of Nehemiah. What I love about Nehemiah is you got a long prayer in chapter 1, but then you have basically, he's got a lot of work to do. And when you got a lot of work to do, Martin Luther said, I got so much work to do, I got 3 hours to pray every day. Well, we don't see that with Nehemiah. We see him saying like 2-second prayers because the heat is on. So I think there's tons to learn from Nehemiah.
All right, so there's 2 books for you to read, Carrie. It's Visioneering by Andy Stanley and Nehemiah, which is already in your Bible. Brian, would you pray for Carrie? Well, let me go to Carrie real quick, see if this has helped. Carrie, you there?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Does this help you?
Yes, I like that you gave me a book to read.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to pray for you. How's that?
Oops, I put her on hold by accident.
Okay, so Lord, we pray for Carrie, and we just thank you that you've given her vision, and she believes that, and she's taking a step of faith, and help her to persevere, and give her the wisdom she needs, and the people around her to bring to fruition all that you want to do through this. It sounds like a good tool that could be helpful. And so help her not to get discouraged, and through Nehemiah, strengthen her arms, Lord, for the work. And we thank you that we could pray for her today. We commit her to you, And Lord, sometimes we can get off on ideas that aren't you totally. So if there's areas where maybe she just needs to be pulled back into the center, then do that as well. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Now, Nehemiah with Sanballat and Tobiah, those guys were just, you could call them bullies. But what happens when the naysayers are concerned family members or something who are just not sure that this is the direction you should take?
Well, those are hard because I think you really do have to look at each and every situation individually. What are the circumstances? I remember when Cheryl and I got engaged, there were plenty of people who didn't think it was a good idea.
Well, you only knew each other for 5 days, right?
No, it was 3 months.
Yes. Oh, okay, that's better.
Yeah, 3 months from the time we met until the time we got married. But anyway, there were people that thought, well, Cheryl was at university. She was at UCI at the time. She was right in the middle of her education. People, you need to finish that. Why don't you wait till you accomplish your goal of getting your degree? Then you can think about it and let Brian get a little more established in life. So well-intended folk who thought they were doing us a favor by telling us what they thought God wanted or didn't want us to do. And we just had to be convinced in our own hearts that the Lord was leading us. So we thanked them for their advice and then did what we felt God was calling us to do.
42 years later.
You
tell them, ha!
Don't even have to. It speaks for itself.
Indeed. Carrie, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to Furman in California. Go ahead, Furman. What's your question? We can hear you.
Oh, hey, thank you. I'll try to be brief. I was asleep one night, and I felt a form of a presence or a body. It felt like something that was resting on top of me. So it wasn't horrifying. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. I woke up, got up, prayed, laid back down, and it happened again. And I know that there was a presence there of some sort. So, yes, I do have a tendency for anxiety, but I'm not overly worried about it because nothing's happened. But I haven't read anything in the Bible about this happening that I can recall. And I just wanted to get some advice from professionals as to how to not only perceive it, but what should I look at that would give me that information in the Word.
Brian, what do you say? Could this have been an angel? Or?
Well, for a minute it says here that you felt comforted. Is that accurate?
No, I won't say I felt comforted, but I would say, in a sense, I did, but I didn't feel uncomfortable.
Okay,
you weren't terrified,
frightened, or terrified.
Right. So it was like neutral. It was like in my mind, it was something that was neutral.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that, so that's why I'm calling. That's why.
Yeah, these are the kind of things that I don't know that we can give an absolute answer to. I mean, we know that there are angels. The Bible tells us there are angels. There are holy angels, and there are fallen angels. We interact probably, I think certainly we interact with both of them. Fallen angels, obviously we're not seeking to interact with them, but we come under oppression from evil spirits and things of that nature. But then Hebrews tells us that angels, holy angels, are sent forth to minister on behalf of those who are the heirs of salvation. And then later in Hebrews, it tells us to be careful to entertain strangers, for some have entertained angels without knowing it. So, there are angels. And I think that if you had an experience like this, just say, Lord, if that was of you, then great. And if that wasn't of you, then I pray that you just prevent that from happening in the future. I've had experiences like that one, but mine were not pleasant. They were more. I sensed more that it was evil, an evil presence. A few times I've had that, and interestingly, almost always in foreign countries, and almost always in the context of doing some sort of groundbreaking, pioneering type of ministry where you could just sort of sense the enemy was working against it, and that was one of the experiences that sort of gave that indicator that the enemy was against it. So, and I've talked to plenty of people who have had that as well. But the part where, like you're saying, it was neutral and wasn't anything frightening, very well could be just God's presence. Very well could be also just a feeling that's unexplainable.
Mm-hmm. Furman, does this help you?
Doesn't really leaves me where I was, but it's very helpful to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're not alone. I mean, others have had, and like I said, I mean, I think, great that it wasn't an oppressive presence.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Got it.
All right, Furman, thanks for calling us today here on Pastor's Perspective.
You ever had any of that, Bobby? Anything like that?
I've had the dark stuff for sure, where I've sensed dark presence.
Yeah.
And I can remember even being in India and really going through the ringer on some of that feeling of oppression. But there have been moments where it's there. But I'm like you in the way that I like to answer that there is an unseen realm. There is God's messengers, and then there's the demonic realm. And I don't want to explain away any of these experiences unless it just directly contradicts Scripture. But I don't want to go and build doctrines off of them either. And so I think that the kind of answer that you gave to Furman, though it kind of leaves him where he is, I would say that's probably exactly where you need to be, is where you are. Because if you try to build some kind of a doctrine off of this, or if we would have called and told you that, oh, you received an encounter from Demon G, and Demon G, what he likes to do is show up while you're sleeping and hover over you, or you experienced, an encounter from Angel Q. And what Angel Q likes to do, that would have been way too specific. And I would be nervous of the person who told me that was, any kind of figure like that. But what Brian did do is he validated that these experiences are real. He said that there is an unseen realm. He identified with you and said that he's had it. And now what I think we would both say is just don't make a big deal about it. It's just, this is the world we live in, and things like this happen, and we carry on.
Indeed we do. Thank you for your phone call today, Furman. Here's a Facebook question that was sent in from Carl, and it's addressed to Bobby. Bobby, what insight can you share regarding a radio broadcast I recently heard about the need to shift our initial apologetics approach to people from a facts or logic-based approach to begin a relational-based start?
I think what can happen is this either-or stuff, right? When it comes to apologetics, there's lots of ways that it can be done. And in the church, if, that's the place we're going to do it, this is an atmosphere of a lot of relationships. And so we should, be equipping our church to understand how to do community and how to have good people skills, and then also how to defend their truth of Christianity. In fact, before we start doing apologetics, we need to understand Bible doctrine. You can't defend the truth if you don't know what you're defending. So we have to give people Bible doctrine. And then when they are defending it, yes, we need to put a good emphasis on relational capital. But it's not either or. I mean, I'm thankful for scholarly journals that put out good logic and thought-based arguments. I'm thankful to fellow Christian apologists who put together good, sound, logical arguments. So I think there's a combination of ways that this apologetic enterprise needs to come together. We're all thankful, for example, for a debater like William Lane Craig, the greatest Christian debater of our day, that goes up against the most brilliant atheists. And they fear a debate with him because he's so gifted and he knows his stuff. Well, some people would say, oh, I don't want to, they would poo-poo, so to speak, the intellectual life in that way. Well, even if you don't understand what William Lane Craig's talking about, we should be encouraged and thankful that there's somebody out there that can go toe-to-toe with people in these venues. That just might mean that we're not called there. So I think there's all sorts of ways to do apologetics. And anytime we start saying, well, it needs to shift from this and just be this, well, what about those who are in your church that are philosophically inclined? They're analytical. It's not going to be enough just for them to hear maybe some heart-based thing. I think about like where I was. If I would have had a pastor just say, let's just focus on love. I had questions, man, and I wanted these answered, and I'm thankful for context that allowed for that. But I think about my wife. She has a simple faith. She doesn't need all this stuff. If I came in last night and told her I was looking at the screen on the porch, thinking about how, all the details about that screen, she just checks out on me in those moments. So it doesn't need to be either or.
There is a woman on hold. Her name is Heather. She needs marriage counseling, but we've run out of time on the program. So, Brian, any thoughts on that apologetics for the 21st century? Or Bobby staring at screens?
No, I think Bobby's answer was excellent. I think, and I think in so many areas, we jump toward an either or, and it is a both and. And I think, there's different methods of apologetics. There's presuppositionalism and there's evidential. And some people say, oh, no, I'm just a presuppositionalist. I don't believe in evidentialism. Well, I think you use the tool that's needed at the moment. Some people need some evidence. Yeah. Some people don't. So you go with what the need is and not it. Again, it's both and. It's not either or.
People skills.
Yeah.
Intuitiveness.
Exactly.
Carl, thanks for sending in your question on Facebook. We are out of time. We will be back tomorrow, so call us then with your questions. The phone number is 888-564-6173. Don't call now because our call screener has gone home. She'll be back tomorrow. Call us then. For Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. Thanks for listening. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.